was the one to blame, but in this silly town, where mischief's all around, Jodi's little tale became quite renowned. It's Jodi Day, it's Jodi Arias Day. Come along and join us in our playful little play. But remember, my friend, that the truth will always win in this town of make-believe, where the fun begins.
Hey.
I love that song.
Oh,
Welcome everybody to Jodi Day.
it's Jodi Day.
I am putting in the chat right now. For those of you who do not know, I am not yet monetized due to things. But I am streaming on Rumble, and you can Rumble rant over there if you are so inclined. I don't like grifting for myself, but I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I wish I could super chat you or give you money and help you out. If you're so inclined, I'm going to put my Rumble stream in the chat, and you guys can go over there and do whatever. Again, if you are so inclined, I do not ask for money. I do this out of the kindness of my heart and for my compassion for Nicholas.
Oh, thank you.
Speaking of, I will be back in the treehouse, hopefully by the next time you see me on a stream. There's going to be some renovations going on inside the treehouse because our plan, Nicholas and I's plan, is to finish off Jodi right around when he's in town here in Michigan, which means that I need to fit this giant lumbering beast of a man into the treehouse. So I got to make some room.
The floor and
Yeah. So after this stream, that's what I'm doing. So hopefully the studio will be set up by the end of today, if not this weekend. And then I'll be back in there with plenty of room for Nick to join me for our last stream. Last Jodi trial stream, I should say.
Yeah. Oh, let's see here. We're in the middle of day 52 when we left off. And it was, if I remember correctly, it was Robert Brown on the stand or Esteban Flores, one of them.
I can't even remember. I just remember last week being so much fun, and I can't remember why. Who was on the stand? And it was just, they were impeachment witnesses. And that's why it was a lot of fun. Yeah, because they're trying to go back through the photos and establish that. Yeah, no, she took those, and there was no PDFs on Travis's computer.
Yeah, nothing. And as you all know, Travis to himself died very unexpectedly, so he had no time to erase or wipe anything. So on his computer was the raw material and his phone and stuff like that. And no, it seems like little Jodi lied.
Yeah, I feel like she lied. Well, the thing is like, she's not caught in an outright lie. What she's caught in is circumstances. Like if you have that stuff on your computer, and if you're into that stuff, and you don't have like a dead man switch on your computer, which means like if you don't log in, everything gets wiped, then that stuff's still going to be there if you are spontaneously unalived, which Travis was. So you would assume it's going to be there still. Hey, Lou, welcome.
Hello, Lou. John, Fiery Red Podcast. You are forbidden from super chatting because we did a fundraiser for you.
Oh yeah, Fiery can't super chat. But if you want, you can super chat Nick on his channel and give me all the likes. And then you can also subscribe to my Rumble channel and pay $5 a month to be a subscriber. I haven't done subscriber only streams yet on Rumble, although if I actually get subscribers, I will. I don't know if I have any, actually.
I think I have 3 Rumble subscribers, and although I'm very, very grateful for the 3 of you, which one of them is Dave.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very, very grateful for that, but doing members only streams on Rumble is really not viable just yet. If I reach 10, I will. 10 Rumble subscribers. 10 Rumble subscribers.
10
then I
Rumble
will start with that. And later today, on the Serial Killer Saturday stream, I will try again to use the Rumble Studio. Apparently, they have done some improvement, and yeah, let's see how that goes. Which means that on the I will stream to YouTube, but I can't preset it, so it will just start. And my goal is to start at around 4 p.m. That's my goal.
Okay.
Okay. So keep a lookout for that one. Hello.
I'm trying to see how many subscribers I actually have. I got to go into the settings here. I got some Rumble rants.
Did you get Rumble rants? That's very
yeah,
nice.
I've gotten them in the past because especially with the Nick Rekieta stuff, I've gotten some Rumble rants. I'm just trying to see where it says my subscribers. Anyways, actually, Rumble's going to be fairly lucrative if you can get enough people over there watching you and doing stuff over there. And since I'm not monetized on YouTube, if you want to give me money, you got to give it to me over on Rumble right now.
Yeah. I am currently
Good morning,
at
everybody.
257 followers on Rumble, but I average maybe between 10 and 25 continuous viewers, and so I mean, for 250 followers, that's I'm okay.
Yeah.
With
I have no subscribers yet. That's why it was hard for me to find on Rumble. Guys, get to Rumble. It's a new free speech zone.
Well, I need to find you on Rumble. Where Rumble? Is it God of Law there too, or?
No, it's still MLS, and I did it MLSHOW because I thought I was being clever, and you can't change it.
MLS show, yeah. ML show.
ML show, yeah. I put a link in the chat.
Yeah, but you have 390 followers. That's
I do. Actually, I have quite a bit of people following me on Rumble, and I probably need to make a dedicated effort to stream there, even exclusively more often. So, all right. Now that we got the housekeeping out of the way, thank you, Ghosterly, for practically doing nothing. There's some money sitting there, so
there.
I'm just gonna start doing it.
Now I'm subscribing back to Dave. So now we have one. We can do members
one
only
each.
When we stream to each other.
It's a net neutral, but hey, it works.
The club for internal admiration.
It's probably some violations of terms and conditions. We're just subscribed to each other. Oh well.
Okay. Should we start? Yeah, we should start.
Yeah,
I think we should start. There they are. We stopped at this. It's a long one. Oh, there you go.
Sidebar.
Sustained. You remember, Detective, giving an interview to 48 Hours. We talked about that a while back.
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember telling the correspondent for 48 Hours that something provoked Miss Arias at the end?
Rule 701, 702, 703, and beyond the scope.
Approach, please.
The objection was sustained, and then he forked that up immediately.
What did he do?
And there's another sidebar. Okay.
Please go back to the jury room and we'll be with you shortly.
Oh, now what? We're going to get a little motion hearing.
Hmm? Judge does not look happy.
No, she does not. Somebody crying, coughing, or dying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
everybody go subscribe to Wilhelm Media.
Yes. All the above.
Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all
We
counsel.
didn't hear the hearing? I wanted to hear the hearing.
Yeah.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, just one more question. You didn't, in your investigation, we'll call it on March of this year.
We'll call it an investigation.
investigate how the shelving unit would react to weight hitting one of the railings. I guess we'd call it dividers between the shelves.
Can you ask that again? I didn't hear the whole question.
Sure. Depending on what we want to, what term these here, the part that goes down, I was calling them railings, whatever you might call them, dividers, right? You see what I'm talking about?
I see what you're talking
Okay.
about.
You didn't do any assessment on how weight would react to touching that area, right?
No, I did not.
Okay. Thank you, Detective.
Sir, the area that's there in the corner, why did you concentrate on that?
Oh, yeah. The photos of the shelves. Did he actually try them? Did he shake them? Did he step
He
on
never
them?
asked that. He never
never
asked.
asked.
Did you test the strength of those shelves to the extent that they could hold someone the weight of Jodi Arias? He never asked that. Why would you not ask that? That shows shoddy investigation.
Area,
It's like
and
staring
not, for
right in the
example,
face.
the part that's closest to the person taking the photograph.
That's the area where the defendant said she retrieved the gun. So I concentrated my measurements in that area.
I don't have any other questions.
It looks like there's some other questions in the jury basket, and I have some juror questions here.
Maybe the
Counsel,
jury
please
will
approach.
ask. Jury questions. Now, once we get to closing arguments, we should have a new bingo.
Yes. No, we should definitely do bingo. Where's Jung? Jung needs to be here. We need bingo for closing arguments.
Mm.
So apparently I can make Nick a moderator on Rumble.
Oh, I can have moderate. Yeah, I know I can have I do moderators on the Rumbles. I have
Moderation. Oh, there we go. Moderators. Now I know how to do it. Okay.
Mm.
So now I need to type in your username. Cool. All right. Let me go do that.
I didn't think of that because I promised my viewers I wouldn't grift on YouTube about the Rekieta thing. I never said anything about Rumble.
Unable to. Oh, because I just cut and paste your thing.
I'm joking, folks. I said I wouldn't grift out of the Nick Rekieta thing. I will just say, hello, I'm Nick, not Rekieta. Mm-hmm. I mean, so, yesterday I had, let's see here. Oh,
Unable to find you.
this is sour cola, which is the only Coke you will see on my stream.
Sour cola. What is that?
Yeah. It was quite nice actually, but it was really sour. Really, really sour. More
You just
sour
have
than
weird
the sour
drinks
pear.
in Sweden. That's all I'm going to say. Weird drinks in Sweden.
Yep. Howdy, Tammy. Hi, Jim, Gwendolyn, Jamie, Tammy, JD Buck.
I need your handle.
Christine is here, and Sal was here earlier. Helen. Did I miss anybody? Bree is here. Lou. John. Vodka Blood. Yeah. Checks out. Ronnie. And Dweez. And everybody else. And you over at the Twitters. Reminder that I would prefer if you went over to the YouTubes and watched me here. Because Twitters doesn't pay me anything. Nothing. Not even the $1.50 I get from Replay Crew on ads.
Yeah, no, Twitter doesn't pay anything.
Is the sour cola alcohol? Yes, it is. It is.
Of course it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
I know copy and paste goes through. That's what I'm doing. But the problem is
it's a liqueur, and it is at. Where?
So I don't know. Like I did the whole URL and it's not working. And
it's about 30%.
I did just the name. It's not working.
Long sidebar. Oh yeah, it's the Euro questions, and it's a few.
Wow. The jury's probably gonna have better questions than a defense attorney.
Yeah. Hey, John. Thank you so much, John. Happy bang the
That's great.
That's an interesting take on Pride Month. Happy bang the third whole month.
Why is she crying? Because she knows she's going to prison for the rest of her life, if not being murdered by the state.
Yeah, for you don't know, this was actually a death penalty case.
Yeah. Don't mess around in Arizona.
Yeah. Do you think that Chad Daybell will get the DP?
Yeah, he didn't even put on mitigating facts, right, in this case.
Yeah, I mean,
from what I understand, he didn't do any sort of mitigation testimony or anything. So he's just like, yeah, I guess if you want to kill me, kill me. I mean, at that point,
he's going for martyrship, and on principle, I'm against the death penalty because there are a little too many examples of people who have been executed, and then after the fact, whoops, it wasn't him. But at some point, at some cases, my objections are really loud, but in Chad Daybell's case, it's me whispering through a sponge. Kind of objection, if you get it. Yeah.
Whispering through a sponge.
Yeah, they are still deliberating this morning on Daybell. They are actually deliberating over the weekend. No, DP does... John, DP does not mean double penetration.
Well, it does in some circles.
Yeah. Not in my circles. Phrasing.
You gotta get out more, Nick.
They are taking a long ass time.
Yeah, a lot of questions. The defense attorney is making sure that they don't ask better questions than he had. That's the problem. I'll figure it out. When I'm not on stream at some point, I will figure out this whole add a moderator thing.
Okay, now that was a long ass time.
What's his name?
Oh. Here we go. Your questions.
All right, Detective Flores, the jurors have some questions for you. To your knowledge, does anyone other than Jodi, was there any record of a gun registration under Travis's name?
No, there was not.
Would there have been any significance to measure all of the shelves since Jodi stated she only used the bottom to get to the very top shelf?
No, and that's why I focused my measurements just on that back row.
Were any of the shoes out of place when detectives arrived on the scene?
Nothing appeared out of place.
To your knowledge, did either of Travis's current roommates at the time own a gun?
No, they did not.
What would you say is the approximate width of the end shelf unit where Miss Arias claims the gun was located?
The shelves themselves are approximately 36 to 38 inches long. They're about 16 inches in depth, and the shelf itself is about 3/4 of an inch thick.
Jodi testified that she helped Travis put some things in the attic. Did you find anything at all stored in the attic?
No, we found nothing.
Is the floor of the attic capable of supporting boxes?
There are beams in the attic, and you can put stuff on the beams, but the rest of it is drywall.
Oh my God, there's not
So
floors,
if it
there's
was a
not
light
beams.
object, I suppose you could put
There's
something.
joists and drywall.
Could you tell if anything had ever been stored in the attic?
No, I can't.
Where is the opening to the attic located?
There's one in the closet area, in that area.
Do you know the weight, height, and shoe size of Miss Arias at the time of her booking?
I don't recall exactly. I don't know her shoe size. But I believe she was about 5'5", 5'6", 115 to 125 pounds.
It appears from the March 5, 2013 photo that the metal pins holding the closet shelves are round for the entire length of the pin. Is that correct?
Yes, they're round.
Were there any signs of evidence found at Travis's house that he owned a gun?
None whatsoever.
Yeah, that.
When Travis's master closet was originally examined, were there any empty boxes or containers found on the top shelf that could have contained a gun?
No.
If Jodi were to stand with her arms pointing straight up into the air, do you know approximately what the distance would be from the ground to the tips of her fingers?
If he's 5'5", that would barely put her tip of her hand at 7 feet, I believe.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. And thank you to Brenda for the donation via PayPal. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
No, I do not.
You don't need to register the
Any
gun.
other questions
to own
from the jury?
Sorry, Dave, what's you
it.
say?
You don't need to register the gun to own it. No one was asking about, like, did you test to see? Could
Did
she
you test
climb it?
his hands for residue or anything? I mean,
Yeah.
that
There's
would
just-
also have been a good question to, did you ever test his hand? No?
There's just a lot that was left on the table with this cross-examination.
Yeah. Now add heels.
We need to see it. We need to see a demonstration of Jodi scratching. I don't think Jodi was a heel type of lady, or
No.
not scratching, stretching. But I would like to see little.
Maybe she has. I mean, from prison. I mean, to my recollection, you're allowed to have a social media account in prison, of some shape or form. So maybe we can ask.
Follow up, Mr. Martinez.
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Nurmi.
I want to ask you, you were asked a couple questions about registration of weapons, that sort of thing, right? In Arizona, is registration required?
No, it is not.
Okay. So somebody
Travis
could own
can
a
follow.
gun, not have it registered, and it'd be completely legal, right?
Yes.
Okay. You were asked some questions about the shelving unit. And I know that you said that you were able to move all the shelves. None of them were secure, right?
They're all free floating,
We're
so
all,
they're
okay.
not secured.
And so when you picked up a shelf or when you took it out of the area, you were able to replace it, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if a shelf got dislodged, it could be just placed right back into the same spot, correct?
Yes, it can.
Okay. And you checked, you said the entrance to the attic and you mentioned the closet, right? You
Yes,
said a closet.
I believe so.
I just want to make sure, are we referencing this closet or some other closet?
No, I believe it's in this closet. There's a couple of different openings. I believe one is in another bedroom as well, or out in the hallway. I'd have to look at the entire photos of the.
You talked about the attic.
So it has a lot of open.
Your report doesn't mention you checking the attic, so was it someone else who checked the attic?
Yeah, it was under my supervision.
Under your supervision, okay. So when you asked the question about your observations of the attic, whether you could tell something had been stored there or not, you said you couldn't tell, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is that based on observations you made or observations someone else made?
Observations somebody else made, and that I was told. It's a basic construction, similar to any other house in that area.
That's
So
hearsay.
again, you're testifying to your perceptions of what someone else told you as opposed to what you saw yourself, just like you did with Dr. Horne, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to go back to the jury room again. Please remember the admonition. We will be with you shortly.
Please stand for the jury.
Now, what are we doing? It's at the end of the day.
I think that's the end of the day.
Are Jodi's hands gross?
I haven't paid attention to her hands.
I was just looking at pictures. I was trying to find a picture of her with her arms up, and then I noticed her hands. Let's see if I could find them. Oh, I don't know where they saved. I feel like her hands are gross.
Record will show the jury has left the courtroom. We are at recess. Counsel and chambers, please.
All right, that was the end of day 52. That was
Ooh,
an
so
interesting
many
day.
days.
Yeah, that was an interesting day. Now, we have day 53 with the return of Dr. Kevin Horne.
Ooh.
Ooh.
These
So,
rebuttal witnesses, except for the first one, have been pretty good.
Yeah.
First one was nonsensical and wasn't needed. And there shouldn't have even been cross because it just made no sense.
Yeah. It was weird. It was really weird.
Oh, I found Travis's sister.
Okay.
There's only 6 people following her Facebook page dedicated to Travis's murder. That's sad. I'm going to follow it.
Yeah, you do that. Now let's see. Day 53. Dr. Kevin Horne. Yeah, we can ask Sal. Her feet and hands all
Thank you.
broken.
Please be seated.
Uh-oh, Annie's driving to Michigan.
Counsel, you wanted to approach before we brought the jury in.
Good morning, Shani.
Hey, Shani Graham.
Oh, I don't like that look. That
No.
sweater with the collar. Mm-mm. Not a fan. Salvador would definitely know what her hands and feet look like.
Yeah.
He's examined those up close. Oh, she shaved her head? Oh, never mind. It's for cancer reasons.
Oh,
That's not good. This is the one that always looks angry and super skinny with the sunken cheeks.
Mm.
In the courtroom.
Shanigram knows how to do this. She has me on the TV and David on the phone. So you can watch, if you have a YouTube on TV and a computer or a phone, you can mute the one and watch the other give like on both. It helps our numbers. Both our numbers. Now, it helps Dave more than me, but I'm deeply appreciative of it.
Well, you guys can go watch on my Rumble too. That would be great.
Yeah.
Go hang out on Rumble.
Hmm?
I see there's, as I said that, I lost a viewer on Rumble. It went from 6 to 5.
Day 53 was a really short day, and it's getting shorter because of sidebar.
Sidebars, sidebars. Everybody loves them sidebars.
And now the jury enters. We might even get into day 54 on this stream.
Why
We need
hasn't
to go to
Salvador gone to this courtroom and taken video for us of just the empty courtroom so we could see how big it is?
Yeah. We are very
Please
disappointed.
be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. The state may call its next witness.
The state calls Kevin Horne.
Dr. Horne, please take the stand. You were previously sworn in this matter. You are still under oath. Do you understand?
I do.
Oh, it's
Your name, sir?
Mr. Chisel. The Chisel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the ladies. Oh. There are ladies out there at the moment sliding off their chair.
For those of you who missed my announcement earlier, YouTube is giving me a hard time with monetization. So I do have my hours, but they won't monetize me. So I said, well, you can go subscribe and super chat me or Rumble rant me over on Rumble. We don't need YouTube. So that's why I'm pushing Rumble.
Mm.
If you guys are so inclined, you don't have to.
Kevin Horne.
And you're the individual that conducted the medical examination or autopsy of Travis Alexander's body, correct?
Yes.
And one of the things that you were able to determine was that there was a gunshot wound, correct?
Yes.
Taking a look at Exhibit 207, is this the gunshot wound that you found?
It is.
In terms of this particular gunshot wound, what organ did it strike and what effect would it have had on Mr. Alexander if that had been the first injury to his body?
It passed through the front of the right side of his skull and would have injured the right frontal lobe of his brain and would have been very rapidly incapacitating.
When you say very rapidly incapacitating, what does that mean if you, to those of us that are not in the medical profession? Would he have gone down? Would he have stood there? Would he have crawled? What would have happened?
He may have been able to take a step or two, probably would have collapsed or lost consciousness within seconds.
And as a result of this particular injury, if this was the first injury, would he have been able, after 2 seconds, to attempt to hold on to somebody, whoever may have been there, for example, the defendant? Would he have been able to do that had that been the first event or the first injury?
I don't believe so, no.
Why
I feel
not?
like this was all gone over.
Again,
This
This
isn't
isn't rebuttal. I mean, he already testified to this.
So when this guy was testifying the first time, he was like witness number 3 or something.
Yeah.
There was a lot of anticipatory rebuttal because they knew what she was going to say. They knew her order of operations. I shot him first and then I stabbied him because he kept coming after me. So they addressed all of this in his first time on the stand. So I guess while technically it's rebuttal because she testified the other way, you don't need to recall him because, I mean, like, okay, maybe he's trying to make sure that the jury, it's fresh in their mind or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I mean, he was on day 3, I think, and this is day 53. So yeah, they might need a reminder.
I guess.
Yeah, it's a long trial. Not as long as the Young Thug Rico trial, where we now have passed 6 months
To be fair, we've been watching this trial longer than the jury has, and I still remember it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Because of the injury, and it's not just the passage of the projectile through the brain, but it's also the shock wave of the projectile passing through with velocity and injuring that structure. So it would have been neurologic shock, incapacitation, unconsciousness.
After this had happened, would he have been able to, let's say after more than the 2 seconds that you've indicated, would he have any knowledge or would he be cognizant of his surroundings such that he would have been able to attempt to defend himself?
Objection, speculation.
Overruled.
I don't believe so, no.
Why not?
Again, because of the injury to the brain, the information processing part of the brain would have rendered him unable to raise his hands, to offer any sort of purposeful action, or to verbalize anything.
Again, what if this shot would have been the first event and he is down for 2 or 3 seconds? What if the indication were that there was a period of time in which his assailant went to, for example, the bedroom and the nightstand specifically to pick up a knife and then come back? If that would have happened and that would have been done in rapid succession, maybe 10 seconds later, would Mr. Alexander have had the mental capacity to move his hands and attempt to grab at anything that was coming towards him?
No.
So if we take a look at exhibits numbers 174, what are we looking at here?
The back of his right hand.
And do we see any injuries there?
No.
Exhibit 175, what are we looking at there?
Again, the back of the right hand.
Do we see any injuries there?
No.
Exhibit 176, what do we see here?
The palm of the right hand.
And do we see any injuries there?
I don't see any, no.
And exhibit
No,
number
Lolita.
177 finally, what are we looking at there?
There's another view of the right hand showing the tip of the thumb, and there is an inside injury of the thumb.
And this would be right here, correct?
Yes.
And is this something that you've termed previously as a defensive wound?
Yes, it's consistent with that.
And what does that mean to be a defensive wound?
That means that the decedent attempted to raise their hand and grab the weapon, or was struck by the weapon while it was being wielded against him.
But if the shot would have been the first thing that happened, and there would have been a period of, let's say, 3 seconds or maybe 5 seconds that went by, would Mr. Alexander have been conscious to be able to raise his right hand in a defensive posture?
Oh,
don't
now
believe
she's
so, no.
crying again. Quick,
Take a look at
crying.
exhibit 178. What are we looking at there?
Well,
It's the back of the left hand.
grab his body.
And do we see any injuries there that could have been inflicted by a knife?
No.
Exhibit number 179.
Yeah, you would assume if she did all the stabs.
That is another view of the
there
back
would
of the
be any
hand with the
defensive
thumb
one.
extended.
Yeah.
What are these things here?
Those are sharp force injuries.
So those are injuries that we are beginning to look at, correct?
Yes.
And exhibit 180, what do they show?
Incised or sharp force injuries of the palm and the edge of the thumb.
And again, you termed these defensive wounds previously, correct?
Yes.
What does that mean in terms of the consciousness, whether or not Mr. Alexander was conscious at the time that these were inflicted?
Well, it's a purposeful action, so he'd have to get his hands up and try to grab the knife, and with the head wound, I don't think that's possible.
It isn't possible if the gunshot was the first thing, correct?
Objection, lady.
Sustained.
If the gunshot were the first injury, would it be possible to have these type of injuries on his hand?
I don't believe so.
What? It's in now.
It's in.
Then we take a look at exhibit.
Welcome, Lefty. Sup.
Hey, Lefty.
So we have a verdict on a weekend? That seems weird.
Yeah, but they did have. They were supposed to deliberate over the weekend. So
Were they?
apparently, yeah.
I don't see.
Apparently, they
Ellen
waited
Seward live.
until they got lunch on Saturday before.
All right. Okay. Let's see. Sentencing day 2. Okay. Court is in recess. All right. Well, nothing's happening, but
Yep.
interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. They are
And
sequestered.
Lefty,
so
go
they
over to
are-
my Rumble channel. Go subscribe to me over there.
Yeah, everybody go to Dave's Rumble channel or mine. I need more subscribers, or it's followers on Rumble, and if you're a subscriber, that means you are paying on Rumble, or
Yes.
something of the sort.
It's like a membership. You become a member over on Rumble by subscribing.
Mm.
They really, really want to off him. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a big decision to make, and they kind of made it kind of quick.
Yeah.
In Jodi's
It-
case, though, it was a hung jury, I think, twice on the
Yeah.
death penalty. And then
Yeah.
they eventually just decided, all right, she's getting life. So
Yeah.
she's only around for Salvador to ogle at because the jury decided that they didn't, they couldn't make up their mind.
Yeah. And here is why.
Yes, thank you, Chris, for subscribing, by the way.
Yeah, and here is one of the reasons I really dislike this prosecutor, because he leaked the name of the person who held out on the death penalty. So she had to move and go into hiding because people were so angry at her.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was because he had a relationship with a blogger at the time, and he leaked the name to that blogger, and that blogger wrote it out with picture and address and phone number. I believe that blog post has since been taken down.
I would imagine.
Yeah. And there may or may, I hope that
It would be a real quick hearing and get the court to
Yeah.
to order
Yeah.
someone to take down the doxing of a juror.
Yeah, and I assume that there was a lawsuit very, very quickly settled.
Oh, yeah.
Number 182, what are we looking at there?
Thank you.
That is the lateral edge of the left hand, again showing the incised injuries, very deep incised injuries at the back of the thumb.
And exhibit 183,
It's a close-up view of the incised wound at the back of the thumb.
are these also these defensive wounds that you previously talked about?
Yes,
If the gunshot had been the first shot, and this was to have occurred maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds later, would Mr. Alexander have been conscious so that he would have been able to raise his hands in a defensive posture?
no,
If the gunshot wound was the first wound, and again, after the 1 or 2 seconds that you talked about have elapsed, would Mr. Alexander have had the capacity after the first 2 or 3 seconds to get on all fours and begin to crawl away?
no, I don't think so.
Why not?
Again, that's a purposeful action, requires normal brain function to be able to do that.
Would
Is that
he,
opinion or fact?
if he were down on the ground and this period has elapsed of 1 or 2 seconds, would he, if he were on his
But then,
back, would he then be able to turn himself so that he would be on his face or the front portion of his body? Could he make that purposeful action after, say, 5 seconds?
Not as a purposeful action, but if he's having convulsions, he may have ended up in that position.
So for example, if we take a look at exhibit 184, this is, what are we looking at here?
Stab and incised wounds at the front of his torso and a wound of his neck.
And if the gunshot wound were the first event, are you saying that this could have happened and then he would have turned such that 192 could have happened?
Only if he's in the midst of convulsions. I don't think in a purposeful way, no.
And how long do these convulsions last, or is there any indication how long they can last?
I couldn't say.
What about the situation if, again, assuming that the gunshot wound was the first event and that you've already told us that after a couple of seconds, Mr. Alexander would not be able to engage in purposeful action, correct?
Yes,
Would he be able to get up after the gunshot wound and after the 2 seconds and walk approximately 5 feet and stand at a sink and sort of hover over it? Would he be able to do that?
I don't believe so, no.
And again, why not?
Again, it's purposeful action, requires coordination of multiple muscles to be able to stand and walk And with a head injury, a brain injury, I don't think he's going to be able to do that.
And would he be able to walk approximately 12 feet 6 inches down a hallway if the gunshot wound had occurred another maybe 6 or 8 feet away? There's the gunshot wound. He goes, as you indicated, he would go down. Would he then be able to walk, get up and walk, go to the sink, and then ambulate down the hallway if the gunshot wound were the first event?
No.
And Exhibit 205, in terms of this being inflicted at the end of the hallway, would he be able to, well, was this inflicted while he was still alive?
Yes, I believe so.
So, Dave, you are looking at the Daybell. Are the court live now?
It's right now is in recess still, but they're going to go live at the top of the hour.
Live
so I
at
didn't
the
know if
top
we
of
wanted
the hour.
Yeah, so I didn't know if we wanted to cut into it when they do go live or not.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to see it.
Okay.
Kind of.
Well, I'll pull it up and get it ready, and then when
So would
we
he have
action, we'll go.
Yep.
been able to, if the gunshot wound was the first event, would he have been able to ambulate approximately 18 feet, walk down the hallway, stop at the sink, go all the way down to the hallway if the gunshot wound would have been the first?
No.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
That's exact line of
Cross-examination.
questioning when he was on the stand the first time.
Mm.
Good morning, Dr. Horne.
Morning.
In your time as a medical examiner, you've done over 6,000 autopsies, haven't you?
Something like that.
So a lot.
Yes.
And in those autopsies, you've dealt obviously with gunshot wounds, haven't you?
Yes.
And would you characterize many of them have dealt with gunshot wounds?
Yes.
And in dealing with gunshot wounds, you're familiar then with a 25 caliber weapon being a lower caliber weapon, right?
Yes.
And as a lower
Lower
caliber
than
weapon,
what?
that means it doesn't have as much power, right?
That's the usual case. Yes.
As a higher caliber weapon.
Yes.
And in fact, in this case, we know that there was an entry wound, right?
Yes.
But there was no exit wound.
Right.
So not enough power, it was stopped by the bone, right?
Yes.
And if the gunshot wound was done when Mr. Alexander was just a few feet away from the gun itself, presumably there would be more power coming from the gun closer to the gun than further away from the gun, right?
It would lose velocity with distance. Yes.
Okay. And so, but here we see that it didn't have enough velocity to even make it an exit wound, right?
Right.
And
But that would also be that it can bounce.
Well, he testified that it like rattled around in his brain and took out some important parts of it.
Yeah.
Right. And so if it came
and-
first, there's no way he's getting up from it.
Yeah, and also, since he wasn't found until many days later, his brain had shrunk, so it was hard to determine exactly how much damage was done to the brain, except that there was entry and then damage to the brain.
Yep.
there was, if we assume that the gunshot wound was the first wound that was inflicted, okay, you would agree that it would not be immediately fatal, right?
Probably rapidly fatal. Maybe not immediately, but certainly incapacitating very quickly.
What's the difference between immediate and rapid?
Immediate is within a second, the person drops and they're dead.
Okay.
And rapid would be seconds to minutes, depends on your definition.
Okay, well, so you would say that it would be immediately fatal?
Incapacitating.
Incapacitating, okay. You know that we know based on the your autopsy results that the bullet went over top of his mouth area, right?
Yes.
And it went through the sinus cavity?
Into the sinus, yes.
And when a bullet goes into the sinus, then it's going to cause bleeding where it goes, right?
Usually.
And that bleeding into the sinus will lead into the nose and mouth, right?
Yes, it can.
And so typically, once there's bleeding into the nose and mouth, we would expect to see blood then coming, being sprayed out of the nose if there's any type of force behind it, like coughing it out or something like that.
Yes.
Travis's brain shrunk, apparently.
Uh,
Jodi's was already little.
Isn't it? Well, you're aware that Detective Flores said that you told him the bullet wound was not immediately incapacitating.
That was already spoken to in his first testimony.
Yes.
So now they're trying to rehash the same thing that the medical examiner, because I believe Detective Flores said that in his initial report after a meeting, but he didn't testify to it in court. So, yeah. So they are bringing that up again.
Overall, do me answer.
I don't recall that, no.
Okay. Are you aware that Detective Flores said that that you told him in particular that the gunshot would not have completely incapacitated someone?
Sustained.
And according to you, you don't recall having any conversation with Detective Flores. Is that right?
That's right.
Ever after the autopsy?
No,
And you obviously weren't here when Detective Flores testified in another hearing besides trial, right? You weren't sitting here watching him testify?
I wasn't present.
So you weren't present to hear what he had to say about what you told him?
That's right.
But you'd agree with me though, right, that you've said once before, in this case, I don't think it would have immediately incapacitated him or killed him, but it would be a serious injury. Didn't you tell us that?
I don't recall saying that.
All right. Do you recall when you testified, and this would have been on January 8th of 2013 in front of this jury, we were talking about some of the things that Detective Flores had said that you had told him. And I asked you, and do you remember telling Detective Flores that you knew this because the gunshot wouldn't have completely incapacitated someone? And you told us, I don't recall saying that either. Does that sound familiar?
That's what I'm saying today too, yes.
Okay. And then I asked you, is that something that you think you would have never said to Detective Flores? And you answered, I think I have said it here in court. I don't think it would have immediately incapacitated him or killed him, but it would be a serious injury.
I think in my very next line of testimony, I corrected my own misstatement, that I do think it's immediately incapacitating, but not immediately fatal.
So when you told this jury that it was not immediately incapacitating, that was a mistake on your part?
I immediately corrected my testimony in the testimony, yes.
So it was a mistake?
It was a misstatement, yes.
Okay. And when you make a misstatement, do you recall talking about the fact that the brain was liquefied?
Softened, yes.
Okay. Well, do you remember telling this jury last time you testified that it was liquefied?
I don't remember using that word.
Okay. And do you remember then correcting that misstatement once we then talked about how you were able to take serial slices of the brain?
Yeah, in this case, with a very decomposed brain, you can section it, but it has the consistency of an appearance of pudding. So I mean, you can still take sections through it.
Ew.
So,
You did that, right?
yes,
You did sections. You took sections.
as much as I could, yes.
Okay. Well, as much as you could, though, when you were able to take sections, though, in those sections, you were able, there was no damage that you could see, right?
Right. And in my report, I say it's limited by decomposition.
But you also tell us in your report that there was no damage that you can see in the brain.
That's right, because of decomposition.
And you also tell us that there's no trauma, there's no foreign bodies,
right?
and you couldn't see any pre-existing natural disease, right?
Right.
So you were able to tell all of that in the brain that you were able to section off or cut sections off.
I was able to state that the brain is decomposed and it limits the examination, but because of where the holes in the skull are, the brain has to have been injured. But I can't see the track through the brain now because of the decomposition.
Right. And so basically you're hypothesizing, aren't you? Because the holes in the skull, you're guessing that the bullet went through the brain, right?
It had to have gone through the brain. It's simple geometry.
I mean, if
Simple
the hole
geometry.
here and the bullet ends up here, it has to pass through something.
Yes.
This is starting to get are you really sure that the patient was dead? Yes, his head was beside me on my desk. I mean,
Simple geometry.
yeah.
Okay. But simple geometry doesn't tell you exactly where it went, right?
I know where it went. It went right through the frontal lobe of the brain. Because
Exactly.
there are two holes in the skull and there's brain in between. Just because I can't see the track now doesn't mean that the bullet didn't pass through that spot.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that. What I'm asking you though is the fact that you can't tell us exactly where it went through the brain, right? Because you see no damage in the brain that tells you that.
Right. Because of decomposition now, I cannot see a wound track through the brain.
Okay. And so you have, and there's, even though there was decomposition, it was enough for you to tell us that you were able to tell that there was no foreign material in the brain, right?
Right.
And even though there was decomposition in the brain, you were able to tell us that there was no pre-existing natural disease in the brain.
Based on that examination and the limitations that are inherent in that examination.
But you were able to tell us that, right?
Right. I did not see any tumors or anything like that. Yes.
Okay.
This isn't good cross-examination, but she has to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that there was a wound to the superior vena cava, right?
Yes.
And that was one of the stab wounds that went just to, is it just to the left of center of a person's body?
Again, I'm
Are you-
referring to my report.
Sure.
Would you rather I use the one that's in evidence, or I brought my own copy?
You can look at your own copy.
It's on the, just to the right
Now we know
of the
why
midline of the
Norman
chest.
started
Okay.
losing weight
And
after this trial because
that
he
particular
wasn't
wound
anymore.
is, that particular
Ooh,
wound has an
tornado
under
sirens going
lower
on.
edge, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and so when something has an undermined lower edge, that means that tells you that the blade is angled slightly upward as it's going in, right?
Yes.
And if it's angled slightly upward, that means that we're talking about somebody having a knife going from down to up, right?
With the body placed in standard position, yes.
And generally speaking, that can happen when the person with the knife is shorter than the person who's receiving the wound.
Overruled.
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Redirect.
Sir, is there a difference between a wound being rapidly fatal and a wound being, or an injury being rapidly incapacitating?
Yes.
What is the difference?
We see a lot of people who have traumatic injuries who end up dying in the hospital months later, but they're immediately unconscious or brain dead. So they're not, it's not immediately fatal, but it's incapacitating.
In this particular case, was this gunshot to the head, was it, in your opinion, did it render the victim immediately unconscious?
Probably, yes.
And by probably, are we looking at seconds or what are we looking at?
Overruled.
Well, it certainly altered consciousness and lack of purposeful action. So within seconds.
And you indicated or were asked about the track of the bullet that may have gone through the brain. And you mentioned something about the frontal lobe. What is it that the frontal lobe does with regard to the body or the individual? And what are the consequences of having a bullet rip through it?
Well, it's the center of judgment. It's higher functions of the brain. It's motivation, things of that nature. And just because the bullet is passing through the frontal lobe, it doesn't imply that that's the only part that it would affect, because there is a shock wave associated with that projectile. So it's going to affect other parts of the brain as well.
So when you say there's a shock component to it, what are we talking about?
As the bullet passes through the head, there's going to be kinetic energy associated with it because it's being shot with velocity. And usually when it passes through bone, it will also deform the projectile, and the projectile will start to tumble. And so that will create a fairly large wound track rather than just a straight shot through the head.
Based on what you found, the round that was inside the head, the entry, the skull that was involved, do you have an opinion as to what direction or what path this bullet may have traveled?
It passed across the right frontal lobe. I do believe it passed through the right frontal lobe of the brain from the skull, forehead, downward into the left cheek.
And was it, according to you, or in your opinion, was it immediately incapacitating?
Objection, asked and answered.
Overruled.
Yes.
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Looks like we have one juror question. Are there any other juror questions?
I wonder what this jury question is going to be, because this was all asked and answered, and I'm sure the jury has to remember it. It was fairly compelling testimony the first time it was around.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, and Chad Daybell, when it goes live, the sentencing, we'll jump over to it. We've got it ready to go.
Yep.
Is it paused? Oh, no. She was just sitting there.
Ask them in the order.
Oh, your request.
Dr. Horne, the jurors have some questions for you. I'm going to ask them in the order they were submitted. Jodi stated she shot Travis in the middle of the bathroom. If that were true, and he would have started bleeding from his nose and mouth, wouldn't there have been blood found in the middle of the bathroom floor?
Normally, if you're shot in the brain, there's going to be blood associated with that. So there would be bleeding where the injury occurred. I would expect that, yes.
Is it possible you could be wrong about Travis being able to ambulate for only a few seconds after the gunshot?
I don't believe so, no.
Can you explain what could happen to cause a different outcome?
I don't understand the question.
What could happen that could allow Travis to still move well and for a longer length of time?
If the bullet had not passed through his brain, that could change the outcome.
Can you explain why you think Travis was still alive when his throat was cut?
Because of the large amount of hemorrhage into the soft tissue around the throat wound. That requires a beating heart.
How frequently have you seen injuries with a .25 caliber weapon?
Probably at least 100, 200 times.
Any other questions for this witness from the jury? Follow up from the state?
So with regard to here you were being asked about the sequencing of events and in terms of the bullet. If the bullet wound was the first wound that was received by Mr. Alexander, would it have been immediately incapacitating?
Yes,
And why would it have been incapacitating?
because of brain injury.
Would there be, under any medical science that you are aware of, would there be any situations whatsoever where the bullet could go through the frontal lobe, as you found, and an individual could continue to ambulate for minutes?
Not for minutes. If they're already walking in a direction, there have been cases where those people will continue to take a few steps just because that's the motion that's already been initiated.
What if there were testimony in this case that he was already on the ground at one point after she shot him? Would he then, based on this bullet wound, been able to get up under any circumstances and walk around?
No.
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Ms. Wilmot?
Dr. Horne, you were asked a question about the neck wounds. You said that it would, if he was still alive at the time, that there would be blood coming from there, quite a bit of blood from there.
Yes, quite a bit.
All right, and you're familiar with some of the photos that there was quite a lot of blood in the entry of the hallway into the bedroom?
Yes, I believe I recall that.
And so is that likely where then that would have happened, based on the amount of blood?
An injury of some kind happened there. I can't recall exactly how much blood we're talking about. I haven't seen the photos in some time.
All right, and from the gunshot wound, we know that we talked about trajectory last time, we know, or the directionality of it, we know that it came in from the right side, correct?
Yes.
And that it was going downwards, right?
Yes, but it may have been deflected by the skull as well.
I'm sorry?
It may have been deflected by the skull as well. That can change the trajectory.
Because the .25 caliber can be deflected by bone.
Yes.
Okay. And when a person receives a neck wound such as that you see in this case, that's going to make it within seconds, that person isn't going to be able to hold up their head, right?
Yes.
And in fact, they're not going to be able to sit up at all.
Right.
And most likely a person with that kind of wound is going to be laying flat.
Depending on where they land. I mean, they could sit in a chair like that, depending on where the body is.
Well, and if they're sitting in a chair, they're going to be slumped over, right? They're not going to be able to hold their head up.
Right.
All right. Thank you. Nothing further.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please go back to the jury room. I will call you back shortly.
Yeah, but I think this doctor testified that the brainstem and the sinus cavity was completely destroyed by this bullet. It sort of bounced around in there. And he would have been incapacitated almost instantly.
Yeah.
And that was testified to now twice. So I don't know how they're going to get out of that. Is she crying because she knows she's going down for murder? Why is she all giggly?
Okay. What's in this final 3 minutes?
We're just burning through these days.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of sidebars and stuff.
I'm just looking at the chat on the Daybell thing while I'm waiting for it. Someone
Please be
pops in.
seated. The record
Anyone
will show the
watching the
presence of
Karen
the
Reed
jury.
case? What a dumpster
The
fire.
defendant and all counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, the court has excused juror number 8 from further participation in this case.
Why?
We are going to take the recess until next Wednesday, May 1st, 9 a.m. Please be back here at that time. Between now and then, please follow the admonition.
Well, May 1st
Avoid
is June
all
1st
media
now. We're not that far behind.
contact. Do not allow anyone to talk with you about the case. Are there any questions? You are excused. Have a nice
There could
weekend.
be a number of reasons. Illness, moving, anything, but that usually is handled at the end of day, and then they will tell them the next day, not at that moment. That sounds weird.
Yeah. Yeah, all of a sudden juror 8's not there the next day. Wednesday, May
Record will show the
1st.
jury has left the courtroom. Counsel, anything else for today?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Blowing through these days. We're going to have to change it now. Day 54.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
Jesus. Yeah, we can get started on day 54 until the Daybell. Day 54 is over 7 hours, so we do have.
Yeah, well, we'll get started on it.
Yeah.
And go from there.
There are more doctors. So I wonder if it's medical.
Please be
examiner.
seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Good morning, ladies and
These are
gentlemen.
rebuttal witnesses, so there wouldn't be.
Did
a
any of you
conflict
see
with
or
the
hear
witnesses.
anything about this case in the media?
Yes, we all did.
See
Your
no
Honor.
hands. Please raise your hand if anyone has attempted to speak with you about this case, other
Everyone
than court
has, Your
staff or the attorneys during the proceeding. I see no hands. Ms. Wilmot, you may call your rebuttal witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Defense calls
Okay, so
Dr.
this is
Robert
now
Geffner.
defense.
Sir, please
This is
come
now
forward right up
defense
here to be
rebuttal.
sworn.
Okay, so the normal MO
Raise your right hand.
is
You do
state's
solemnly
case
swear
in
the
chief,
testimony
defense
you're about
case
to
in
give will be the
chief,
truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
state's rebuttal, and then very
Sir, please
rarely
walk
is
right
there
in
a
and have a
defense
seat.
rebuttal.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mustache guy.
Yeah, imagine getting excused months in. I know. This person's probably
You
like,
need
oh,
that
damn it, if
right
I
in
had
front
just
of you,
done
you
that
can see. That is so much.
52 days ago.
You may proceed.
Sure, number 8. Get out
I'll
of
let
this
you
thing.
pour some water first.
What was his name? Which one is it?
This
It's
doctor?
either. Oh, it's not Jill Hayes.
Good morning. Can you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
I'm Robert Geffner.
And Dr. Geffner, you are a doctor, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a PhD?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And can you tell us a little bit about your education and training to get that PhD?
Well, I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry, which isn't related to my PhD. Then I have a master's degree in psychology from San Jose State University. Then I have a doctorate, a PhD in psychology from the University of California at Santa Cruz.
They realized
And
how
after you
shit
received
their
your doctorate, did you get a
their
license
other
to practice?
psychologists were.
Well, I first had to have postdoctorate training and supervision. Then I received my license. I was an assistant professor in Texas, and so I was licensed as a psychologist in 1980, but I had been licensed
Not his actual
prior to
hair
that
color.
as a marriage and family therapist in California
I
when
like
I was
his
working
Either
on
he
my
dyes his
doctorate degree.
mustache or his
Okay.
hair.
And when you're licensed as a marriage and family therapist, is
I
that
don't
with
know
a
about that.
master's?
I'm pretty gray
Yes.
down here.
Okay.
And
And
the
so
little bit
while
that I
you're
do
working
have
on,
is
once
not
you get
gray
your
at all.
doctorate and you do your postdoc work,
Thank
that's
you,
when you
John.
get your license as a
Remember I put the
psychologist?
DUI.
Yes, I mean, you have to do various
That's
things. You have to pass tests, you have to document your
That is
training,
what
and then
science
you can
does to you.
apply and become licensed.
All right. And you did that in 1980?
Yes, I was licensed in Texas as a psychologist first in 1980.
Okay. And are you licensed as a psychologist anywhere else?
Yes.
Where else?
I'm now licensed in California. When I relocated to California about 14, 15 years ago, then I became licensed in California. I think I got that license in 1999.
All right.
So I'm still licensed in both states.
Okay. So how long have you been practicing as a psychologist?
As a psychologist, 33 years.
And is there a difference when you say practicing? When can you say that you've been practicing as a psychologist?
Once you receive a license, well, as a psychologist, you have to be licensed then as a psychologist, and then you can call yourself a psychologist, and that's when you can practice in a variety of settings or on your own. If you're licensed in another profession, then you can call yourself that profession, and then you can be in practice from that standpoint.
And can you say that, can you count the time that you used to get your training and supervision to ultimately get your license? Can you count that as practice time?
Not officially. You cannot practice in a mental health professional until you have some type of license.
Oh, this is the rebuttal that she did so good on the stand, but she counted her practice up until as actual experience.
Yeah. So
that-
okay. So this guy is rebutting the state psychologist who said that she's been practicing for like 8 years when on
For
her
the first-
own she was only practicing for like 3, because before that it was educational based. She was actually getting her degree, although she counted that as practice. So that's why this guy's being called. Okay.
Yeah.
Need a board certified.
And then you can only call yourself by that license. So, for example, licensed as a marriage and family therapist, once I get that license, I can call myself a marriage and family therapist. Once I get a psychologist license, I can call
Yeah, but having experience is different from, I mean, I have, for instance, my original education is as a chef and then into food tech. Did I just did my experience in cooking start when I graduated? No, it started a bit earlier than that, because you have practical.
I say I've been practicing law since 2010 because my first trial was in 2010. Although I was still in law school and I was supervised by the prosecutor.
Yeah.
It was what it, it was actual practice experience. So,
Yeah.
we might be going live on Daybell.
Yeah.
myself a psychologist, and then I can practice. Practice could be on my own, it could be for a clinic, it could be for an agency.
Well, tell me what it is that you're currently employed with.
On the Daybell,
I have a variety of titles. I am the president and founder of the Institute on Violence, Abuse, and Trauma at Alliant International University. I'm housed in San Diego. The university actually has 7 campuses around the state of California, plus in programs in 3 other countries. And I'm also a research professor of psychology at Alliant International University. My actual title is Distinguished Research Professor. I was promoted from clinical to distinguished. That's the highest level. That was about a year ago. So I'm a professor there. Those are the things I get paid for, but I'm also the founder and president of the Family Violence and Sexual Assault Institute, which I started in East Texas 29 years ago, but I don't get paid for that. It's like volunteer work.
Okay. And so how long have you been working then with the Alliance University?
Alliant International University I started with when I relocated back to Southern California. 1999, so it'd be about 14 years there, being a research professor, training doctorate students. In the early years, I actually taught some of the courses. Now I supervise still.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your responsibilities? You're telling us that you've supervised. What is it exactly as the president and founder that you do, and professor?
Well, I have a variety of responsibilities. The nonprofit institute has several components. We have a training component, we have a publications component, we have a policy component, we have what we call a direct services. That means actually providing services to clients or working on cases like this. We also have a nonprofit bookstore. We provide continuing education to professionals in a variety of disciplines like attorneys, psychologists, social workers, marriage and family therapists, etc.
Let me ask you about that. How do you provide continuing education?
We're well, 2 ways. We're an accredited agency nationally and in states. So that means if we co-sponsor or actually put on a training, then people who attend it can get what's called continuing education units or hours, which is required for most licenses. So attorneys, psychologists in most states are required to have a certain number of hours of continuing education each year. So we're an agency essentially that can provide those hours. So that's the continuing education. We actually put on trainings ourselves. So we have 2 conferences that we actually, meaning my staff, put on, one large one in September each year in San Diego, which is the International Conference on Violence, Abuse, and Trauma. That goes for almost a week with various trainings, and it brings in anywhere from 1,200 to 1,400 people from all over the United States and from other countries. So we actually host and put that on with national planning committees.
I'm sorry.
We also put on a regional trauma conference every year. That one is in Hawaii. We're in the 10th, this will be our 11th year next year for the trauma conference. The international conference
I don't care.
now this year will be its 18th year. So those are major events, but we do trainings throughout the country and in other countries, either myself or others that we're associated with.
You mentioned trainings with for lawyers, other psychologists. Do you ever train have medical doctors
Yes.
for training?
Yes.
And what about judges?
Yes.
What kind of training do you do for judges?
For about 10 years, I was the lead psychologist for the National Judicial College. That's the main entity in the United States to train judges in a variety of areas. They're located in Reno, Nevada. So judges come there from all over the country and spend anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks being trained in different topic areas. My areas of the training were in domestic violence, child abuse, diagnostic assessment, use of expert witnesses, how to make appropriate referrals, things like that. So I worked usually with 3 judges, and those trainings usually went for a week. So judges from all over the country would come. And then I've also done them for a variety of states that brought me in to train judges on particular topic areas. Most often domestic violence or child abuse or aggression or violence or trauma, risk assessment, how to deal with repeat offenders, the dynamics of these different types of forms of violence and abuse. Those would all be topic areas that I would be brought in to train people on.
You mentioned that your organization is a nonprofit organization.
Yes.
What does that mean as far as, because we know that you're here as an expert, what does that mean as far as, do you get paid for what you're doing?
Well, I'm on salary for the Institute. As president of the Institute, I have a fixed salary. All my staff are salaried. So we don't get paid for anything in particular. So working on the cases we work on or doing the trainings or those things doesn't change our salaries. And unfortunately, our salaries have been frozen for the last few years, but it doesn't change. No, I don't get paid. I don't get any money myself for the work we do on these things.
Okay, so in other words, coming here, are you getting anything extra into your salary this year because you've come here to testify?
No.
You talked about you mentioned some of the training that you train. Who is it that you train?
Variety of professionals, depending on what we're asked.
I'm sorry, I meant supervise. We talked about training.
That's very good.
I'm sorry, supervise. Who is it that you supervise?
Right now, I supervise a variety of people. Part of my position at the university
it would be great if you supervised the state's
research
witness.
professor is I have what's called a research group. That means there are people who are working on their doctorate degrees in clinical or forensic psychology who meet with me each week, and they have to do research projects. They're called dissertations. So I supervise for doctorate students right now who are working on their dissertation. They would have to, in order for them to be in my group, they have to be doing research on some areas of my expertise. So it'd be like trauma or violence or abuse or aggression or neuropsychology or forensic psychology, family psychology, something along those lines. Then they would be in my group. So one.
Court is live.
Is court just live?
Yeah, looks like it. Yep, we just got a live court feed. We are going to interrupt this regularly scheduled programming for Chad Daybell sentencing.
All right. Good morning, everyone. We're on the record on case CR 2221-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. This is the special sentencing proceeding that has been conducted last couple of days. The jury's been deliberating. The court is advised that the jury has reached a verdict on the special sentencing proceeding and the special verdict form. I'll note the state's present with the 4 prosecutors who have tried the case, Mr. Pryor and his client, Mr. Daybell, present as well. I'll also note there's a courtroom conduct order in effect. I'd appreciate everyone complying with that, as you all have throughout this trial. I will note on the record, before we get to the verdict, that we did have a jury question yesterday that the court answered, and I've provided the question and copies of the answer to counsel. In addition, a second question came in today. I did go on the record with that question and answer with counsel and the defendant present, returned that response to the jurors. They've now reached a verdict in the case, so the court is going to have the jurors brought in and have the verdict delivered for reading.
Don't know how you feel right now. Welcome all to our interruption of the Jodi Day for the sentencing of Chad Daybell. Shall he get life? Shall he get death? Shall anybody care? I mean, this guy. If you haven't been following this trial, there's a number of other channels that have been. I know Nick and I have not been, but I did follow Lori Daybell's trial. I didn't follow this one, mainly because I thought it was going to be a rehash, and it kind of was. And some of the witnesses, a lot of the witnesses were kind of boring. But let's just say all signs point to guilt. He is, of course, innocent until proven guilty, which he was last week. Was it this week or last week? I don't know. But the question here today that the jury is answering is whether or not he's going to get life or possibility of life or death. And I vote death. I think he's going to get death. That is my guess. And welcome all to anyone else joining in. I know I just tweeted it out that we were going live with this. I don't know if anyone new has joined us.
All right, please.
I'm opposed to the death penalty mainly because I don't trust the state to get it right. But with this guy, I'm okay with it. Yeah, God told us to. They were all zombies or
Thank you.
something.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the court understands you've reached a verdict on the special verdict form. Is that correct? All right, Mr. Bailiff, if you would please return the special verdict form to the court, I'll review that. Ladies and gentlemen, the verdict form is somewhat long and complicated. The court is going to take a moment to review the form.
Oh, Lou, we're going to get back to him. Maybe not. We'll see how long this takes. He's got a glorious mustache, by the way. And he's very qualified as a psychiatrist. I don't know. He's got a PhD of sorts. And he's basically going to say that the state's witness was does not have the level of experience she said she did.
Yeah, Martinez really got the Me Too treatment before it was actually a thing. I know there are some people out there saying, oh, he was Me Too. No, the Martinez thing was way before, years before Me Too was a thing.
Yes, it was.
All right, the court's reviewed the special verdict form. I do find it's been properly filled out by the jury foreperson as well as correctly signed and dated. At this time, I am going to request, Madam Clerk, Ms. Holstein, if you would please read the special verdict form. If you'd like to remain seated or standing, it's a long form and will take some time to read, but however is most comfortable for you, Madam Clerk, you may go ahead and read the special verdict form into the record.
So I'm going to take an hour to read.
In the District Court of the 7th Judicial District of the State of Idaho, in and for the County of Fremont, State of Idaho Plaintiff versus Chad Guy Daybell Defendant, case number CR 22211623, Special Verdict. Part 1. We, the jury, render the following verdict on the alleged statutory aggravating circumstances. 1. Has the jury unanimously found that the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the following aggravating circumstance? The murder of Tylee Ryan was committed for remuneration, or the defendant employed another to commit the murder for remuneration or the promise of remuneration? Yes. 2. has the jury unanimously found that the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the following aggravating circumstance: the murder of Joshua Jackson, hereinafter J.J. Vallow, was committed for remuneration, or the defendant employed another to commit the murder for remuneration or the promise of remuneration? Yes. 3, has the jury unanimously found that the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the following aggravating circumstance: the murder of Tamra, hereinafter Tammy Daybell, was committed for remuneration, or the defendant employed another to commit the murder for remuneration or the promise of remuneration? Yes. 4, has the jury unanimously found that the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the following aggravating circumstance: the murder of Tylee Ryan was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, manifesting exceptional depravity? Yes. 5, has the
He
jury
should know
unanimously
he's
found that the
going
state has
down.
proven beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the following aggravating circumstance: the murder of J.J. Vallow was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel,
Jinx.
manifesting exceptional depravity? Yes. 6, has the jury unanimously found that the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the following aggravating circumstance: the murder of Tammy Daybell was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, manifesting exceptional depravity? Yes. 7, has the jury unanimously found that the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the following aggravating circumstance: by the murders or circumstances surrounding their commission, the defendant exhibited utter disregard for human life? Yes. 8, has the jury unanimously found that the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the following aggravating circumstance: the defendant, by his conduct, whether such conduct was before, during, or after the commission of the murders at hand, has exhibited a propensity to commit murder which will probably constitute a continuing threat to society? Yes. If you answered no to each of the above questions, you do not need to answer any other questions. Simply have the presiding juror sign this verdict form and notify the bailiff that you are done. If you answered yes to any of the above questions, then please answer the questions in part 2. Part 2. We, the jury, render the following verdict on the weighing of all mitigating circumstances against the statutory aggravating circumstances. You are to only answer the following questions for those statutory aggravating circumstances for which you answered yes in part 1. 1, with respect to the statutory aggravating circumstance that the murder of Tylee Ryan was committed for remuneration, or the defendant employed another to commit the murder for remuneration or the promise of remuneration, we unanimously find that when weighed against this aggravating circumstance, all mitigating circumstances are not sufficiently compelling to make imposition of the death penalty unjust. 2, with respect to the statutory aggravating circumstance that the murder of Joshua Jackson, hereinafter J.J. Vallow, was committed for remuneration, or the defendant employed another to commit the murder for remuneration or the promise of remuneration, we unanimously find that when weighed against this aggravating circumstance, all mitigating circumstances are not sufficiently compelling to make imposition of the death penalty unjust. 3, with respect to the statutory aggravating circumstance that the murder of Tamra, hereinafter Tammy Daybell, was committed for remuneration, or the defendant employed another to commit the murder for remuneration or the promise of remuneration, we unanimously find that when weighed against this aggravating circumstance, all mitigating circumstances are not sufficiently compelling to make imposition of the death penalty unjust.
And he offered none.
4, with respect to the statutory aggravating circumstance that the murder of Tylee Ryan was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, manifesting exceptional depravity, we unanimously find that when weighed against this aggravating circumstance, all mitigating circumstances are not sufficiently compelling to make imposition of the death penalty unjust. 5, with respect to
Oh, what's happening with the audio?
Did we lose the mic?
Yes, we lost the mic.
5, with respect to the statutory aggravating circumstance that the murder of J.J. Vallow was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, manifesting exceptional depravity, we unanimously find that when weighed against this aggravating circumstance, all mitigating circumstances.
Do we need a new mic? Okay, we're going to get a
Oh my God.
separate
it's
mic.
just-
Thank you.
He's just delaying it. It's like when they hook you up to the machine and then all of a sudden they're like, oh wait, we got a hiccup. You're not dying yet. Give us a second. We'll get to you.
I'll read 5 over.
Yes, start with 5 again. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
5. Okay. With respect to the statutory aggravating circumstance that the murder of J.J. Vallow was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, manifesting exceptional depravity, we unanimously find that when weighed against this aggravating circumstance, all mitigating circumstances are not sufficiently compelling to make imposition of the death penalty unjust. 6. With respect to the statutory aggravating circumstance that the murder of Tammy Daybell was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, manifesting exceptional depravity, we unanimously find that when weighed against this aggravating circumstance, all mitigating circumstances are not sufficiently compelling to make imposition of the death penalty unjust. 7. With respect to the statutory aggravating circumstance that by the murders or circumstances surrounding their commission, the defendant exhibited utter disregard for human life, we unanimously find that when weighed against this aggravating circumstance, all mitigating circumstances are not sufficiently compelling to make imposition of the death penalty unjust. 8. With respect to the statutory aggravating circumstance that the defendant, by his conduct, whether such conduct was before, during, or after the commission of the murders at hand, has exhibited a propensity to commit murder, which will probably constitute a continuing threat to society. We unanimously find that when weighed against this aggravating circumstance, all mitigating circumstances are not sufficiently compelling to make imposition of the death penalty unjust. Once you have completed part 2, please have the presiding juror sign this verdict form and notify the bailiff you are done. Dated this first day of June 2024 and signed by the presiding juror.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, for reading through the verdict form. Ladies and gentlemen, the court will note that given the complexity of this special verdict form, just I think in fairness to all those in attendance, including in particular victims and the parties, the layman's explanation of this verdict is that the jury has made a finding that it would be appropriate to impose the death penalty as it relates to counts 1 through 6 in the amended indictment. And so pursuant to Idaho Code 192515, the court is directed that the defendant would be sentenced to death on those counts. The court will take up a concluding sentencing proceeding. I also have additional counts of insurance fraud. I've discussed with counsel moving forward in a consolidated hearing. The court's proposing that we do that this morning, waiving the right to a pre-sentence investigation report under Criminal Rule 32A. Before I get there, just let me ask at this time of the jurors, is this your true and correct verdict that's been rendered in this case? Very well. Does the state wish to have the jury pulled on the special verdict form?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Does the defense wish to have the jury pulled on this special verdict form?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Very well. As I mentioned, then that's the result of the verdict form. The court would then proceed with additional sentencing on those 2 counts, as well as the counts 1 through 6 determined now by the jury. Mr. Pryor, is the defense willing to move forward with a consolidated hearing on those counts this morning without a pre-sentence investigation report?
As previously indicated, Judge, yes, we are.
Okay, is the state going to be ready to proceed with a sentencing on those issues as well?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counsel, I do want.
So my understanding is that he's going to be sentenced to death on counts 1 through 6, but with the remainder counts, which is like the insurance fraud and stuff like that, he's going to get sentencing now immediately, but it's obviously going to be less than death.
To take a brief recess just to briefly prepare for that, given the verdict, and I will come back on the bench. It really won't take long. I would suggest that a 30-minute recess will come back on the record. The court will
30
conclude with
minutes?
that sentencing
We're going to be
hearing.
done streaming by then.
So if everybody could be back here by 10 after, we'll have the jury return one last time to the jury room to wait for that final sentencing hearing. We'll conduct that in the presence of the jurors also, and then I'll have concluding
Why?
instructions for the jurors. So
Why?
we
Why
will
do
be
the
in
jury
recess for
have to
30
stick
minutes. We'll
around?
come back for that final stage of the proceeding. Thank you.
All right.
That makes no sense to me. Why does the jury have to stick around? They already did their job. Let them go. I'm not familiar with death penalty cases because we don't have them in Michigan, and I don't care about those guys. So he's getting death on counts 1 through 6 for the unaliving of the kids, and he is going to probably get something lesser for the insurance charge. That is just in case his death penalty gets overturned somehow, or the conviction gets overturned. He's going to be sentenced to everything else. Obviously, the length of time that he gets for the insurance fraud will be immaterial compared to the death that he will hopefully face sooner rather than later. But, you know, appeals and whatnot, we could talk to Steve Gosney about that. I imagine it's going to be several years before he's actually facing the chair or the firing squad or whatever Arizona has these days. It's pick, Nick's pick. Ha ha ha. Oh, yeah, his avatar. I don't know where Nick went. Nick left us, and I can't start the show without him. So we're just sitting here, hanging out, waiting. But essentially, yeah. Oh, there he is. So he got death. You missed it.
No, I didn't.
Wow.
Well, technically, the judge has to reach that in sentencing, but everything he said points to, yeah, it's going to be quite easy. Take half an hour, have a cup of coffee and a donut, and I'll be back.
Why keep the jury, though? That's what I don't get. Why are we keeping the jury? Let the jury go. They don't need to sit in and watch the sentencing. Let them go enjoy the rest of their Saturday. It's still morning there. That seems annoyingly frustrating if I was a member of the jury, rather. It is what it is, I suppose. Let's see if there's anything else. Nope, court's in recess. We don't have anything for like a half hour. But he didn't move. He was like a statue. I don't think he blinked. Jung asked if he was breathing, and I did look closely, and I see a little bit of chest movement, but he was barely breathing. I was wondering if he might try to slip himself something in the courtroom. We've seen that in the past. But nope, he just sat there and took it. I guess he wanted to stay. He wanted to stay unanimously. Well, I don't know. Please fast forward the rest of this guy's experience. No, we got to take it all in. We got to absorb his experience. And the main reason why is because he's being called specifically to challenge the state's witness on her experience. So his experience is exactly why he's being called to the stand. So we got to sit through it because that's the relevant part. Normally it's just foundational, but this is actually the relevant part of this witness's testimony.
All right, but let's get back to the trial we are all here for.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump out. So, Jung, you stick around. I'll be back.
Yep. Okay, we have 20 more minutes. Then I will redirect to my sentencing stream on the Chad Daybell. But we have something to listen to before.
Area of focus for me would be the supervision of the doctorate students for research. The second part is the clinical part. As I mentioned, one of the other components of our institute is direct services. Means we actually treat clients in our local region or people who come into our institute because they've been traumatized, either victims or offenders or children or families, all sorts of issues in the mental health arena. We have a treatment for. So right now, and each year actually, there are 2 doctorate students who are getting their degrees in either clinical or forensic psychology that could be from our university or other universities. We're state recognized, meaning people can apply to be in our internship programs virtually from anywhere. So we have 2 interns that work with us each year. So the ones I have now will finish in June and the new set will come in July. So I supervise them for clinical practice. We train them on a variety of issues in clinical and forensic psychology. And then I have a postdoctorate fellow. This is a person who's already received his or her doctorate degree, and they're now doing the supervised training after their doctorate toward their licensure. So we have a postdoctorate fellow now, and we have another one who will again start in the summer. So each year we have a new group that comes in. And then we have other psychologists and professionals that come to us for specific training. So there's now a licensed social worker and another licensed psychologist who already practice in different areas of the state of California, and they come to us once a week so they can be trained, for example, in doing child custody evaluations, another area we focus on. So in addition to overseeing the staff of the Institute, then those would be people I supervise officially.
Okay. You mentioned the postdoctorate fellow that you have. Now, so after somebody gets their doctorate, you were talking about needing to have so many hours before they can actually apply for their license.
Yes.
Sorry. Are you familiar with the way that the state of Arizona works when somebody is applying to get their license?
Yes.
And how does it work once you get your doctorate for someone to get their license?
Oh, God. All these sidebars. Everyone's concerned. Let's see here. All right.
Now, you said that you are familiar with the way the licensing works in Arizona?
Yes, pretty much.
Okay. And specifically with regard to getting, once somebody has their postdoctorate, so they have their doctorate degree, and prior to applying for their license, are you familiar with how many hours Arizona requires of supervised work?
You may answer yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. And what is, based on your knowledge of that, how many hours does the person have to have supervised before they can apply for their license?
Sustained.
Judge, may we approach?
Yeah. I say it once and I'll say it again. You can't un-F a Foster clock. And Jodi needs a bit more than this doctor saying the other doctor was too inexperienced, in my opinion.
Way Arizona. Dr. Kuffner, when you say that you're familiar with the way Arizona works as far as the number of hours a person needs to get after their doctorate to the time they get licensed, how is it that you know this?
Well, there's 2 ways. One is because we deal with postdoctorate fellows from all over the country who apply to us to work at our center. The American Psychological Association publishes a guide each year on what licensure requirements are needed in each state. So that way the people we supervise, we can work with. So people go back to different states. For example, we've had people go back to Massachusetts. We've had people stay in California. We have people go to Texas. So they publish a guide on what's required. That's the first thing.
Okay.
Second is there are 2 states that we've been doing more work than in other states, Arizona and Hawaii. So we've actually looked at what it would take for me to get licensed in both those states. And so we looked at the requirements in the licensing board acts themselves. That's what tells you what the state requires. So both those ways are the way somebody like me or somebody else can decide or find out what the requirements are.
Okay, so based on that information that you have, do you have an understanding of how many hours a person would need or what it takes to get a license, I guess, for psychology after their doctorate?
Yes, there's 2 ways. One is the normal way after you get your doctorate is 1 year roughly of postdoctorate supervised experience by another licensed psychologist. Almost all states, including Arizona, put a number of hours. 1,500 hours is what's required, for example, in California and Arizona. So they take an exam, usually 2, one that's national, that actually tests you on your knowledge of psychology, and another tests you on your knowledge of the ethical codes in that particular state, et cetera. Once you pass that and you've had your number of hours of supervised experience has been documented, you can apply for your license in Arizona or in other states.
All right. So
That's one typical way.
that's somebody who's just receiving their doctorate. That's
Correct.
how it's typical.
Yes.
So if somebody just received their doctorate, is there any possible way in Arizona that they could be licensed immediately?
Not to my knowledge.
All right. So they would still have to do that 1,500 hours of postdoctorate supervision work.
Yes.
What's the other way? If somebody like you, if you want to become licensed in Arizona, is there another way to do it?
Yes, if you've licensed in another state, then each state has what's called reciprocity. They have requirements of how you can transfer or obtain an additional license in another state. If you have what is called a diplomate from the American Board of Professional Psychology, then many states honor that, and that with another license, assuming no ethical complaints have been validated against you, you can apply, and then you don't have to do exams and you don't have to do the others. They assume because of those credentials that you've met the criteria, and that's what we're looking at with both Arizona and Hawaii.
All right. And you mentioned diplomate. What is that?
In the mental health profession, for example, for me, licensure is one level of ways of verifying amount of experience and credentials and experience. It's a level of recognition. There are levels of recognition beyond licensure. There are certifications somebody can get, and then the highest level in the mental health field is termed diplomate. Diplomates have very specific requirements of what you have to do in training, experience, and process to obtain a diplomate.
What kind of things do you have to do?
For me, you had to be 5 years after your doctorate, 5 years after licensure. You had to have, it's an area of specialization, so you had to actually have training in that area of specialization. You had to be able to document the supervised training. Then there's normally some type of examination. For me, and what's customary is a 3-hour oral examination by a committee of people who already have the diplomates. And that happens after a committee has reviewed your credentials, experience, and work, what's called work product. You have to send samples of your work to them to be able to have them verify that you actually know what you're talking about and that you do have this specialized training. So when you've done all that, then you can receive a diplomate.
Okay. So as I understand it then, a diplomate is something that is a specialized training of something in particular under psychology.
Yes, there are different, there are diplomates for different areas of specialization that somebody can apply for it.
All right. How many diplomates do you have?
Sorry, what
Anyone ever heard the word diplomate before? What is a diplomate?
No,
I don't know
not in these circumstances.
Yeah, I have no idea what that is. Anyway, I didn't know if one of our psychology experts in the
are you
chat
still
room-
here? Lou, tell us.
Lou or Jung or somebody.
Yeah.
Just curious. It's a weird word. Nope, nobody. Okay, we'll keep going.
I have two.
All right. So let's talk about one of them. What's one of them?
One is in family psychology. So I have a specialization in family psychology, and the way it's termed, for example, in my vita or credentials is I'm board certified in family psychology.
And so what does that mean for the rest of us? If you're board certified in family psychology, what does that mean you can do?
Theoretically, it means that you can trust, because I've been evaluated by those who have the expertise, that I know something about that field, that I have met the specialized training requirements and supervision and have the credentials. So it's a way for the public or others to be able to be somewhat assured that this person has that kind of training, because a licensed psychologist, for example, doesn't really tell you if I'm trained in clinical psychology, am I trained in family psychology, am I trained in neuropsychology, am I trained in industrial psychology. It just says I'm licensed as a psychologist, and then theoretically you're supposed to practice in your areas. But for somebody else looking at that, it doesn't tell you if this person actually has specific training or specializations.
So the diplomate tells us that you have a specific training. What's the other diplomate that you have?
Neuropsychology, clinical neuropsychology.
Okay. And with that diplomate, that tells us you have a specialty in neuropsychology then, right?
That is correct.
All right. And how often do you have an idea of or knowledge about how often psychologists have diplomates? Is this something common that a lot of people have?
Sustained.
Do you have an understanding based on your training and experience in dealing with other psychologists and the number of years that you have worked as a psychologist? Do you have an understanding as to whether or not many psychologists or few psychologists have diplomates?
So yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. How do you have that understanding?
The American Psychological Association, which is involved in one of the major organizations nationally that is at least involved with diplomats. The actual one with them, there are a variety of recognized boards. One is the American Board of Professional Psychology, and they publicize, I mean, they publish information each year on how many diplomats there are and in what different areas. So from that, we know what percentage of psychologists have one diplomate, and then there's also information on how many have more than one.
Okay, so based on that information, what's the percentage of people who have one diplomate, psychologists?
In the field of psychology, it is just a few percent. In other words, less than 5% of those who are licensed and practice as psychologists have a diplomate in one or another area of specialization.
And what happens to that percentage when we talk about somebody who has 2 diplomates like you do?
It drops way down. Less than 1% of psychologists have 2 or more diplomates.
All right. How long, part of the component that where you, at the Institute, you said is forensic work, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and how long is it that you've been doing forensic work?
30 years.
Okay, and what does that mean? What does that encompass when you tell us you're doing forensic work?
Well, theoretically, there's 2 types. One is training. I mean, you can do forensic work by training others, meaning work tied into a court one way or another. So there's criminal cases like this one. There are civil cases where somebody is suing somebody else. There are family law cases. So forensic work means somehow dealing with the legal system, courts, etc. So you can be involved in the forensic arena because of training others, or you can actually practice. Practice means either as a psychologist, you may be in court testifying about clients you treat. You can also be in court testifying as, quote, an expert witness. If you have an area of specialization, you can be in court to educate a judge or a jury about particular areas. So that's another way. Or you can actually be what's called a forensic evaluator, where you are actually evaluating a person or a case specifically for court. So all those are possible.
All right, and what type of forensic work have you done?
All of those.
Okay. Have you testified before?
Yes.
Do you have an idea about how many times you've testified in the last 30 years?
I would estimate probably, as overall, because different years change, at least 150 times.
Okay. And when you've testified before, are they always for criminal cases?
No, it varies. In my earlier days, for example, in the 1980s and 1990s, I would say I probably testified in more criminal cases than civil, but we also testified in others, in state court, in federal courts, in various states. In more recent years, not as much criminal, much more civil or family law. It just varies. Everything is word of mouth. I mean, we don't advertise. So it's just whatever happens to come to us. It just rotates around. I could go months without testifying, and then just coincidentally, I might testify 2 or 3 times within a month on completely unrelated cases in different states.
Okay. And so some of those, you said family law, is that things like child custody or things like that?
Yes, exactly. Or it could be domestic violence or child abuse related to either custody or just related to the abuse. Or it could be in a juvenile dependency court because of child abuse or domestic violence. Or it could be in a criminal case. So that topic area could be in almost any court. It just depends on what the particular case is about. And if somebody is suing somebody or somebody is charged with a crime, it could be either way.
Okay. And what about capital cases? Have you been called to testify for capital cases, cases involving the death penalty?
Yes.
And do you have an idea how many times you've done that? And roughly, if you don't know the exact number.
I probably have, can't remember exactly how many I've testified. I may have to change my estimate of how many times I've testified, because I think I've actually testified in near 100 capital cases in my 30 years. It's not.
She just said, wow. Jodi just said, wow. Did you see that?
Near 100 capital cases, civil cases and others. I probably have to go over 200 times I probably testified. A lot more capital cases in the past than more recently.
So that's something, capital cases is something that you haven't done as recently? Is that what you mean?
Correct. I think the last capital case I testified in was probably about 10 or so years ago. I think it was in Louisiana or somewhere there. When I relocated, I'm not sure people found me or know where I am. I just haven't been asked to do capital cases. So we do, as I said, we do whatever comes into our clinic or into our service. We don't promote or advertise.
And when you've been retained on capital cases, what kind of work are you typically doing for those capital cases?
Usually one of 2 things. In many of those cases, we actually evaluated the defendant. That means in those 100 cases or more, there's more cases, but I didn't always testify.
Okay.
But we actually would do complete psychological evaluations.
I like him. He's got a good personality.
of those defendants. And then in other cases, it would be as an expert
So far.
witness, where I did not evaluate, but I would review records or be asked about specific areas of interest in the case.
When you say
She's
evaluating
drawing
defendants,
pictures.
does that mean that you're being used as a witness for the innocent phase of the trial?
Well, it varies. Actually, quite a few of the cases were what's called case in chief. Even though we weren't involved in innocence or guilt, they would have us testify as to the person's functioning, like if they were victims of domestic violence or drug history or other things in the case itself. But we wouldn't be involved virtually at any of these cases in whether somebody was innocent or not. It would be what's called mitigating factors. Are there things that went on with this person that might be a reason or help understand why what happened? That would be more, but sometimes we would testify in the regular case. Sometimes they would bring us in and we would testify about our evaluation if they were found guilty in the second phase, which is the sentencing phase. It just varied depending on the attorneys and what they preferred.
Okay. And in the times that you have been, well, since you've been licensed, have you ever had any type of disciplinary action?
No.
What about, have you ever had any ethics committee or a licensing committee reprimand you or found complaints to be valid complaints of any kind?
No.
Well, I think they're hoping
All right,
it is,
so-
but it won't.
Some of the things that you have experience in and has to do with testing, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and in this particular matter, in preparing to testify, did you review different assessment tests?
Yes.
What did you review?
Reviewed and, well, some we reviewed, some we rescored ourselves.
Okay, well, did you review an MMPI-2 results?
Yes, I did.
And did you rescore those yourself?
Yes, I did.
And did you review MCMI or the Milan test? Did you review that?
Yes, I did.
And have you reviewed a post-traumatic stress test?
Yes, I did.
And that's called the PDS?
That is correct.
And have you reviewed a trauma inventory test?
Yes, and rescored that one as well.
Okay, and that's called the TSI, right?
That is correct. It's the TSI-1.
TSI-1. And how many TSI-1s did you review?
2.
And in any of your work, did you ever speak with Ms. Arias yourself?
No, I did not.
And did you ever review any records with regard to Ms. Arias? And let me say, like police reports or that type of matter?
I did not.
All right, so did you contain your review basically to the assessments that were done, that were by others?
That and the report and information from Dr. DeMarte.
Okay. And
Yeah, okay. It is just before 2 hours. We are soon to be getting into the meat of the matter, and that will be next Saturday.
Yeah, we'll get into the meat of this guy's testimony. Again, his whole focus is going to be to discredit the state's witness. That's why they went through all of his background. That's why I didn't skip it, Jung, because I think that's important. But we'll get into the meat of it. We'll see exactly what he's able to do. Maybe they do. Maybe he does discredit the state's witness. She was very convincing. So I'd be curious to see how this guy attacks her testimony.
Yeah.
By the way, we're going to redirect you, or at least I am. Well, Nick is too.
Yeah.
To Nick's other stream, Chad Daybell.
Yeah, the Chad Daybell sentencing. Now, the jury have recommended, they found no mitigating factors, but the judge has not put the pen to paper yet. And that is why that court is in recess. He gave them 30 minutes recess, and then come back and put it to paper. So it's ultimately not decided, but it probably will be. So, everybody, thank you. I'll see you over there.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
In a little town where things aren't what they seem, there lived a girl named Jodi with a tricky little scheme. She went to the courtroom where she told a little lie, but the truth came out. Oh my, it wasn't ninjas or pirates, as she tried to claim. Jodi was the culprit, she was the one to blame. but in this